Ciao, jewelry makers. I'm Joey Balistreri, and yes, you see a lot of rings on me today. I have been making this quick and easy project, which is done with a single bead and scraps of wire, and that is all you need. I'm going to take some of these off and lay them on my mat so that I can do a quick tutorial and show you how I did these. This is literally all that you need. A scrap, about 3 inches of 18 gauge wire. If you want to do 16 gauge, you could, and a scrap of 20 gauge wire. So I literally am using scraps, but I use the Beadalon, both of these 18 and 20 respectively, round, medium temper, German style wire, and I'm using the gold color. And that is all you need. And then you need a single bead. Now, there are some things to know about your bead selection. I found in making these that the larger bead would yield a larger size ring. So I would say if you needed an 8 or a 9, you might want to do a bead that is 10 to 12 millimeter. Let me bring in my caliper and show you the size on this one. And I literally pulled these beads from my stash. So this one is a 12, if you can see the measurement, this one is a 12 millimeter bead. And so I was not able to get a size 7 or 7.5 with a 12 millimeter bead. So it's just a guideline that maybe you would be going down 2 to 3 sizes from your millimeter of bead. The other one I had in my supplies was this little mille fiori bead. And let me get a hold of it in the caliper and tell you what the millimeter size on this one. This one is a 10 millimeter size bead, and that one will be as well. This one I think was a 9, if I remember right. Yes, this one is a 9 millimeter size bead. And so I was able to get a few sizes. I know my ring sizes. So on this finger, I usually wear a size 9 or 8.5. This finger is an 8. This finger is a 7. So I was playing around with my ring sizes here. And one thing about this design is it is a little bit difficult after the bead is on to really get the right size. So this says that it's not quite a size 8, which, I know that this finger is a size 9. That's what I generally wear. So, and I can interchange my rings on these fingers. So just a heads up with this design, it's super easy and super fun and super quick, but it's not exact when it comes to your sizing. So I'm just going to show you sort of how mine turned out. So this one is measuring right at an 8. And again, I can do it on my middle finger. I could fit that one on where I would normally buy a size 9. So it's just the nature of the design with this bead floating across the bridge. So each one, my sizing came out a little. This one actually says that it's a 7.5. And again, it's just the nature of the bead, but I know that I can wear it on my size 8 finger. So that is just I'll leave this one on while I'm working. So that is just a little heads up about the sizing. And that is to say that this is a fun project and play with your beads. So I do have my little small bench block here, but it is really not totally necessary to hammer. I hammered all of mine, but it is not totally necessary. And I used my one-step looper to make the loops on either side of my bead and then my tools. So let's make one of these together very quickly. And I do not know where I got my mille fiori beads. I might have brought these back from Italy, but they are not difficult to find. And there are some Chinese sources for this type of bead as well. They are not always Italian. And then this bead is something I've had in my stash for 100 years. So I'm just showing you this. I picked this up at the Orlando Bead Show, another coin bead. So when you're going through your beads, really flat works best, and something that would sit nicely on your hand. This one, which I love, is a little table cut check glass bead. So I'll just share this with you. I think this came from the Bead Box Bargains website, and these are 9mm check table cut glass spiral square beads. So they may not have this exact color and finish, but it should not be too difficult of a bead to find. So I'm going to choose this little blue Mille Fiori bead to work with, and this little scrap of 18 gauge wire and this little scrap of 20 gauge wire. And I'm going to start by putting my wire in the one-step looper and give it a squeeze. And while it's still in the tool, I'm just going to pull that wire. If you can see, I just want to center my loop on the wire. And so I have a nice perfect loop here. I have the habit of sort of tidying things up and putting my pliers to them, but it's really not necessary, and we will be opening these loops when we begin the assembly on our ring. So I'm just going to thread this little bead on and put another simple loop on the other end, and I want it going in the same direction as my first loop. But there's an easy fix to that if you're not paying good attention and you don't get them exactly lined up. You can straighten them a little bit while it is still in the tool. Mine is very straight, but you can do that. Or once you remove the tool, you can do it with 2 pairs of pliers. So they come out pretty perfect for me. I just tend to do this opening and closing motion to work harden a little bit. So now this would be the trickiest part. And I have done rings a lot with 16 gauge wire, but I don't have a lot of strength in my hands. So I have gone down to the 18 gauge wire. It's a little bit easier for me. And I think I want to do this ring at, let's see, I think I want to do it at an 8. So whatever size you would like, you're going to go down maybe another size, one size up. So I don't know if the camera is picking up the sizes on my ring mandrel. Here's 8, here's 9, and I'm just going to center that little scrap of wire and use my thumbs because that's my strongest finger. So I'm going to use my thumbs and hold it right in the center and wrap that wire right around, holding it on that 9. And on the back side, I really want these wires to overlap. And this is really the trickiest part. You have to be patient and work this a little bit. And sometimes I even pull it up a little further on the mandrel to get it more tight and more the shape of the mandrel, because we're going to have an opportunity to put this back on here a couple of times. And, we still have work to do on this wire before it's actually a ring. So it's below the size 9, which is okay. So I'm going to take it off and sort of show you what we have now. This is almost like creating a gigantic jump ring if you've ever made your own jump rings. And how this worked best for me is to kind of center my bead where those wires cross and come in with my cutters with the flush side facing the center, because I want a nice, clean, straight cut on that wire right around where the center of that bead would be. I know my fingers are a little bit in the way. Then I can just take it away, and I'm going to snip that wire right there. So that's what I have so far. And then, as I said, this is almost like making a jump ring, because I'm going to come right back over where I just cut that wire with the flat, flush side of those pliers and cut the other side. So now we have something that looks like a gigantic jump ring. And we can move it a little bit because we are going to make some loops and it will go back on the mandrel. So our next step is to take our round nose pliers and make a loop. Now, if you're not really experienced at making loops, you might want to take a permanent marker and put a little mark on the barrel of your pliers, because both of these loops because it's a ring and sitting on the top, you really want both of those loops to be the same. So if you can see, mine are pretty close to being the same on all of my rings. You can fix them. There's some tricks to fixing them, but it's easier to do it correctly the first time. So I'm just going to grab that, and that's about where I always am for my standard size loops. And I'm just going to roll that back until the end where I've cut meets the other wire. So can you see? I made a little loop, and I'm just going to repeat the exact same thing on the other side, checking to see I'm about where I always am. Oh, my plier slipped off. Try again. Give it a little start, get it started, and then just roll that right back until it meets. Now, we're a little bit misshapen, but that's okay because we can go back to our mandrel. And now I usually pull it up a little bit further than the size I was going for, a size 8. So I'm going to come up here to a size 7. And you'll find that once you have your loops made, you have something to sort of hold on to and grip onto, where before when you were using your thumbs to get it started, it was a little bit more difficult. And if it doesn't seem to be cooperating, you can go up even to the smaller size of the mandrel. And so here's where you have the choice if you want to hammer it. So I have my mallet here, and that can give you some work hardening. And honestly, I did not use this on my other rings, but if you're having trouble getting a nice round form, that could really help you. But what I like to do is, what I did on these is, I did not even use my chasing hammer. I use my hammer from my toolbox, and it doesn't take much, just very gently, just a little tap, and I'm going to turn it over and do the same thing, because again, I used 18 gauge wire instead of a thicker wire. And why I like this, and you'll see this in another video, a regular jeweler's chasing hammer, for those of you who are not familiar with this type of jewelry making, it has a little bit of a roundness to the hammer head, and so this is a way that you can flatten out wire. And then this little ball side is a way to do texturizing. You can give that sort of hammered or dented look to your wire. But I actually opted for my regular hammer from my toolbox because of this edge. So what I had been doing on my rings is kind of, if you can see, angling my hammer and just putting these little like slashes in my wire. I just like the texture that it created. So it's not your normal jewelry hammer. And again, you don't have to do this at all. These rings are easy and fun. I just enjoy a little bit of pounding on my bench block from time to time. And I like playing with my hammers and things to come up with different textures. So on mine, I did this, and you can hear I have not muted my microphone, so I am not pounding very hard. It is very gentle, and I'm even going to just work harden those loops that I made, and just flip it to the other side. But you don't have to do this part. I did make one without doing it. So now you'll see, after you hammer, sometimes you misshapen your loops. So I'm just going to come in with my round nose pliers and just tidy that up. Make sure that loop is closed. And so I'm going to put this back on the ring and see where we are. So see, I can open it up to the 8. And so let's attach our bead and see where we are with size. I have a lot on my work table here. So I'm going to take this bead and open one of these simple loops, just like a jump ring, and connect it to one side of the ring. Close that up, and then I will, full disclosure, this second side is a little bit trickier to attach. The first side goes on like a breeze. This side, you have to be the boss of the wire because it's a little bit tight. I found that if I got a hold of my pliers and sort of pushed it through that loop, I could make it behave. I don't know if you heard it click. And then you have to get a hold of this. It's inside that loop, and close it. So that's probably the trickiest part of this ring. And I can see I'm not happy with this loop. I'm not sure if the camera is picking it up, and I'm glad that that happened, because there is a little trick to tidying that up. Or if you find that one loop just looks a little bit, I don't know if I did that with a hammering or if I did it with my pliers, but you can take the flush side of your cutters. Can you see? I just took a tiny bit off the end, and now I'm going to come in with my round nose pliers and just get a hold of it and bend it back. And then you can even close it up a little bit with one of your chain nose pliers. So that's a lot better. So if your loops are not perfect, there are ways to fix it. And I have to also tell you guys, rings are not my forte. It's just not one of the things I've done a lot of, or that I have ever really loved making. But I have to say, I get in the mood to make them. And today was one of those days, and this project was so fun and so easy. And I just had to share it with you, even though this is not really the normal thing that I like to make, but looks like I got it right at the size 8. And there's your chance. Now you have to be careful if you did want to come in and work on your band a little bit more with your mallet. You do have to be careful once that bead is attached and make sure you don't break your bead. But let's have a try on. Oh, it's perfect. So this is like the most fun, quick, and easy project. If you have a special bead that you want to showcase, or that was a gift, or that you picked up on a trip, this is a great way to really enjoy it and see it. And these come together so quickly, they also would make great gifts. So I really hope that you enjoyed this quick and easy project, and that it will inspire you to try something on your own. Go into your stash, shop what you already have, and find some coin beads or some flat square beads and give this a try. Thanks for watching today. Ciao, jewelry makers.